and welcome back to Marshalling the Madness, where we look at another day and look at all the mistakes that Lockdown and special guest stars have made. On this occasion, our themes is when it starts to be a wipe and what is barge passing. Like, does going into the sand mean that now you should start avoiding people? Can you touch the green and not be considered crashed? We are running some intake handicaps here and there, because tight races make for more exciting ones, and they increase the probability of interaction. This driving is not informed by the previous marshalling because it has been captured before that thing was made, but we have increasingly been paying attention to the rules, so there might be some apparent learning. The constructiveness of the marshalling the madness to the drivers is yet to be determined. There are also some maneuvers where there doesn't happen contact, but there's drive lines that would like suggest that it might happen if people dodge away. And then there's the issue that if people dodge away when they don't need to and contact doesn't happen, does that mean that the one that made contact probable, should they be like advised against that? It has been a talk point on the stream and on the supplementary materials behind the rules. I did find reference that you're not supposed to scare people, but finding the line has been tricky and I haven't found any point in the rules that would actually have teeth against that. So I end up feeling stupid for stop crashing yourself. At the very least, when there's a risk of contact and it actually happens, then I'm gonna count that as unmitigated thing, and the chance that I could have not made it is not. You should be thinking about it is a gamble when you go into a situation where you can't control whether contact happens or not. I also figured out that the purpose of the scenes where the rules are not actually broken, but the rules are implicated is an example of actions that are like mandated by the rules. If you would disregard the rules, you could drive them differently or would drive them. So highlighting what the rules mandate of you might be useful. Sometimes it's about accepting suboptimal lines, but sometimes it's to counteract the claim that there's nothing that can be done. Quite drastic action in order to hit walls and such can usually be taken to avoid contact with other players, and it can feel icky to take that drastic action, but the rules would point that yeah, you should do that. I guess it's because it's modeled for real physics and real lives being at stake, and being virtual and not so big a deal. People can't really die here, well, outside of heart attack and such, but it's a safe environment, and the purpose of the rules is a bit different. And I asked around on the forums and I got an answer that substantial overlap, one way to measure it is that if the front axle reaches to the point of the back axle, that's the start of significant overlap. And I'm gonna use that definition in these examinations. The previous Marshalling the Madness is seen by the lockdown crew, and it did kinda highlight that there's a difference between third person and first person viewing, and there was a lot about the mistakes being negative, but I am a little stickler that I like to get it done sometimes, and hashing out in the moment would get in the way of actual racing. So I'm moving forward with the experiment. Going up is an extreme case of where the person goes deep into the sand, but then it's like a maneuver where somebody could argue that I was trying to stay on the road. But surely cutting that deep is within the crash territory and the crash rules should apply. Part of the point is to get the discussion moving. And we have the parts close calls, more of that. I think I got annoyed when I felt this was barge passing and started to barge pass myself a lot. I get a lot more ticks on my end. Now with the definitions, there's more clear cut on what is happening, although there's some murkiness in there. For example, when the the turn starts, should the forward or backwardness turn with the road or be measured with the straight. When the turn-in starts to happen, in one sense that's pretty clear, but when I look at this footage, like there's like pre-turning when the driver is thinking whether I'm gonna turn, they might twitch in that, but then decide to keep it straight, and then a little later like start the actual turn. That kind of makes for two turning points, and if the overlap is established between those points, then it's pretty ambiguous on whether the overlap happened before the turn-in. One can see my tilting about the issue also about why you need to follow the rules. If the first incident would have been resolved clearly at it being barge passing or not, then these reverse barge passes would not have happened. And one can think about all of these in the other aspects of things. So if the callings are a little loose, that just means that people are gonna drive however they get away with. Once everybody has an intuitive feeling what is allowed and not, then you can get more clean racing. But the trouble is that not everybody gets that, and there can be like reasonable style differences there. And that's where learning the new things and defining things comes in. It has to be said that the gaming culture is something of a thing, and I guess this is a little bit of a hardcore of a game. There has been a lot of going with randoms that they think they are hot shots, that they are good, that will like win them over in personal conflict and maybe resolve the issues with what we are playing with about who is the greater man, who is the weightier word on, and who's faster, like determining that. So now you don't get to do more mistakes because you are a faster player. But then again, the server admin could be arrogant and just rely on kicking everybody out. So in order to avoid that kind of arbitrariness, it's good to check on that too. Now I'm afraid whether I will be kicked in the next session, but hopefully the footage will speak for itself and there is rather information and understanding rather than aggressiveness and pressuring people. If you do find content like this enjoyable, we were guessing whether we should all sit around the replay footage and more elaborate on subjective viewpoints, and it felt like maybe something, but the viewer numbers are a bit low, so we don't know whether people appreciate that. So if you like more like that content, it would be nice to bring that enjoyment to light. The last trade in this track is very sensitive on how blocking goes, and I'm always nervous about whether the squeezing will be respected. There are a couple of bits where I'm leaving a bit of room because I'm not confident that my room will be respected, and sometimes the small differences in time are like 0.1 or 0.2 seconds, and that extra room can make or break that things. The previous hairpin turn is also a paid place to do barge passing, and if you go over the greens, one can even try to do a shortcut barge passing. Not much of this at this time. So lots of negative and positive examples on what is acceptable and unacceptable barge passing. If you like the fun, you can try to nitpick. Did I get everything right? Would you have made a different call? Was the measurings done in the correct places and in correct ways? Currently, lockdown is driving for speed at Thursdays and Sundays, so if you want to try to come show that you know how to not make these mistakes, be a guest and you can join the fun that way. Catch you next time around.